you're trying to build up government as the center of people's lives, other things that are, that they might build their lives around, those are rivals to it.
You're watching Restoring America, where we shine a light on the fundamental values of this country and all the reasons why they're worth saving. This week, we're going to talk about the revenge of the Normies and what the 2024 election meant to the average American. I'm Kaylee McGee-White, and this is Restoring America. November's election was a sweeping victory for Donald Trump and the Republican Party, but it was also a total repudiation of leftist governance, specifically the left's nanny-statism and cultural bullying. It turns out average Americans, or the normies as we'll call them, people who don't live in the Beltway or work in higher education or another elite sphere of influence, people who just want to raise a family, work hard, and plug into their community. They don't very much appreciate being suffocated by elite activists who want to change their way of life. They don't want Catholic hospitals to be forced to perform abortions, which Kamala Harris supported. They don't want boys to play on their girls' sports teams, which Kamala Harris supported and President Joe Biden has enforced. They don't want their language to be policed by government officials who unironically use the term Latinx. They just want to be left alone so they can live their normal lives. That message especially resonates this week as we celebrate Thanksgiving. Your family, your faith, the values that keep you grounded and make you who you are. Those are deeply important, and no government or political movement should be rewarded for trying to take them away. We have a great guest joining today to discuss this further. But before we get to him, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button. And for more, head to WashingtonExaminer.com. With me today is Tim Carney, a senior columnist for the Washington Examiner and a senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. Tim, thanks for joining. You've written a lot about how the values that normal or everyday Americans care about, like faith, family, community, have been targets by the left in both culture and politically for several years now. Can you explain why those values are targets for the left?
Well, I mean, you could look at it in a different way. One, an ideological thing. If you're trying to build up government as the center of people's lives, other things that are, that they might build their lives around, those are rivals to it. So family or community or faith, all of those things draw people's attention away from the federal government. I mean, Alexis Tocqueville wrote about this sort of thing. But also on the left, there has been this long sort of, it's almost an individualism, but a different kind of individualism than you see on the right or among libertarians. A philosophy that worships autonomy above everything else. My body, my choice. And then you saw how they started kind of attacking marriage, the Democrats in this ad, where, oh, well, don't tell your husband how you voted, and painting marriage as sort of this trap. And then abortion and even having kids was a real handicap or anything, is in the way that a lot of the Democrats talk. So the philosophy of autonomy, well, if you belong to a church or you are married or you have kids, you're not fully autonomous. And so in some ways that cuts against the rising sort of ideology on the left.
In this philosophy of autonomy, it's interesting you point that out because Democrats did explicitly campaign on that this past election cycle, and yet it was pretty thoroughly rebuked by voters. So do you see the November election results as a sort of triumph for, let's call them, the normie Americans?
Normie Americans who are attached to their community, who center their faith in their life, who aspire to marriage and a family or have marriage and a family, yes, they definitely showed that the minority, that the left viewpoint, which was anti-family, was a minority. So certainly what has happened in recent years is Democrats have been pretty good at getting a lot of normies, family, community-centered people. You see, Hillary would say it takes a village to raise a child, and you could hear, okay, you know what, I do need community support in raising a child. Biden won the Democratic primary the first time around by going to like black churches and getting people. This election cycle, though, the Democrats rejected that. They said sort of super autonomy-focused thing, and normal people just said that's not how we see our lives.
And they rejected it, which also means that Trump and the Republicans in charge of Congress now have a mandate to act on that. So what are some concrete steps that the incoming Trump administration can take to protect values like faith, family, and community for everyday Americans?
Well, for one thing, a lot of it's going to be getting out of the way. Like a federal Department of Local Community Cohesion is going to be counterproductive. But making sure that the education department isn't driving divisive, destructive ideas like transgender ideology into schools. Remember, Merrick Garland and the Biden administration started trying to crack down on parents who were getting involved in their school districts because there was porn in their libraries. A lot of that just is the federal government getting out of the way and letting parents have more say would be step number one. And also just protecting and shoring up religious liberty. We have some laws that protect religious liberty, but there needs to be more to make it clear that religious schools are going to have access to the same sort of funds that public schools do or non-religious private schools do. So the Supreme Court's been good on that, but we could go out and establish more federal laws just saying we're not going to discriminate against religious institutions, because for the average American, if we talk about community, what it means is a church or a local school, and in a lot of cases a religious one.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much for joining us for this important conversation. And for more exclusive interviews, breaking news, and conservative views, be sure to check out WashingtonExaminer.com.